So, what happens when a young person breaks the law? It's a tough question, right? How do you balance holding someone accountable with, giving them a second chance? Today, we're going to dive right into Canada's system for youth justice and see how it works.
Let's start with a basic truth. Crime affects everybody. It's not just about the people directly involved. It damages things, it hurts people, and it can make a whole community feel less safe. The justice system? Well, that's how we as a society try to respond to that harm.
Okay, to make this a bit more real, let's try a little thought experiment. Picture this. You're just hanging out and boom, you accidentally break a window. Someone calls the police. Now, what do you think would be a fair or just outcome? A fine? Maybe a warning? Or should you have to fix it yourself? Just keep that idea in the back of your mind as we go through this.
Because that simple scenario, just a broken window, it actually opens up this huge conversation about what justice even means.
So the justice system is basically the whole setup, all the institutions and rules for applying laws. And it's built on some really important ideas. In Canada, one of the biggest is this: you're assumed innocent until you are proven guilty. That single principle really shapes everything that comes after.
And in Canada, the path you take through that system depends, pretty heavily, on one big thing: your age.
And this isn't just an informal thing. It is written right into our laws. On one side, you've got the Youth Criminal Justice Act, we call it the YCJA, and it's made specifically for young people. And on the other, there's the Criminal Code of Canada, and that's for adults. So we're talking two completely separate sets of rules.
Okay, so just how different are they? Let's break it down. The YCJA covers kids from 12 to 17. The focus here is often on things like counseling or community service. A huge deal is that their privacy is protected, and one of the main goals is to help them avoid a permanent criminal record. Now, for adults, that's 18 and up, going to court is pretty standard, their names can be made public, and getting a criminal record is a very real possibility. So these are not just small differences, they're two totally different ways of thinking about crime.
And we really need to understand what a criminal record means. It's not just some note in a file somewhere. It's a permanent, public mark that can literally stop you from getting certain jobs, from volunteering, or even from traveling to other countries. The consequences of that can follow you for your entire life.
So you have to ask, why? Why this completely different approach for young people? Well, this quote from a former Minister of Justice really gets to the heart of it. The whole idea is that young people are, still figuring things out. They might not fully get the consequences of what they're doing, and, this is the crucial part, they have a much better chance of turning things around. The system is basically built on that idea of rehabilitation. It's a bet that giving a young person a second chance is better for everyone in the long run.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's follow one person's story through the YCJA.
All right, so this young woman's story starts in court, but the judge doesn't send her away. Instead, her very first step is to meet with something called a Youth Justice Committee. And this is a group of volunteers, just regular people from her own community.
Now, listen to what she says was the hardest part. It wasn't the judge, it wasn't the committee, it was actually facing the person she stole from. That focus on direct accountability, on facing the harm you've caused, that's a really powerful part of this whole process.
So her consequences weren't just about punishment, they were about learning and trying to make things right. She had to do 20 hours of community service, go to some education sessions, and talk directly about the impact of her actions.
And her final thought here really says it all. She felt it was fair, it gave her that second chance, and she says it made her a better person. It really shows the system working the way it's supposed to, focusing on getting a first-time offender back on track instead of just punishing them. Now, her journey is just one way it can go. The YCJA is actually designed with a whole bunch of off-ramps before a case ever even gets to a judge. It could start with something as simple as a warning from a police officer or a referral to a community program. Then there's the justice committees like we just saw. Court is really meant for the most serious cases.
So, if it's not a one-size-fits-all system, what things do they actually look at to decide what happens to a young person?
Well, officials weigh four main things. First, how serious was the offense? Second, does the young person have a history of getting into trouble? Third, what's their attitude like? Are they taking responsibility? And finally, they look at the person's circumstances. What's going on at home, things like that. It's about seeing the whole person, not just the crime.
And all this flexibility, this focus on each individual, brings us to a really fundamental question. Does this system end up being truly fair and equitable for everyone involved? I mean, listen to this quote from a former Chief Justice of Canada. It really spells out how high the stakes are. A just society isn't just a nice idea. It's essential for our safety, for our security, for everyone to thrive. It's not a side issue. It's the main event.
And when we think of justice, this is the image that pops into our heads, right? Lady Justice with the blindfold and the scales. It's a symbol that is just packed with meaning. The blindfold is supposed to represent impartiality, treating everyone the same, no matter who they are. But then you have the scales, which are all about balancing things. The Youth Criminal Justice Act tries to weigh all those individual circumstances we just talked about. So the real question becomes, how do you balance those two things? When should justice be blind, and what factors should it be allowed to see and put on the scale?
And that brings us to the final question, really the one at the very heart of this debate. After seeing everything, the goal of rehabilitation, the focus on second chances, the specific factors they consider, is this the right way to do things? Or should the justice system be harder on youth? There's definitely no easy answer to that one.